Today, our administration filed a lawsuit against 17 companies that have taken part in Texas Governor Greg Abbott's scheme to transport tens of thousands of migrants to New York City in an attempt to overwhelm our social services system. These companies have violated state law by not paying the cost of caring for these migrants. And that's why we are suing to recoup approximately $700 million already spent to care for migrants bused here in the last 2 years by the state of Texas. Governor Abbott's continuing use of migrants as political pawns is not only chaotic and inhumane, but makes clear he puts politics over people.
That's pretty rich coming from a guy who claims sanctuary city mayor status. If you want to talk about using people as pawns, I think that demanding that everyone else cover the cost of your virtue signaling as a sanctuary city mayor, that seems to be using people as pawns. Welcome back to the program. Dana Loesch here with you, bottom of this third hour. Maybe they can just take what they're wanting to recoup off of the $13.4 billion a year, apparently, that Texas taxpayers have to pay to cover the Biden administration's cost of illegal immigration. Joining us now is the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, who has been just duking it out with the administration over this. Governor, I just wanted to get your response to this because you've been fighting the DOJ, you've been fighting the Biden administration. They're fighting over the razor wire, any kind of inflatable barrier in the water. And now you have Eric Adams coming out and saying that you're using people as pawns and they're suing these bus companies. I do think they want a remain in Texas policy. I think that's what this is designed to affect.
Well, let me address this from several levels. First, the amount of migrants that Texas has sent to New York is a tiny fraction of what Joe Biden has sent there and a tiny fraction of what NGOs, non-government organizations have sent there. If he's going to start suing people for busing and flying migrants into New York, he needs to start with suing Joe Biden, suing these NGOs like Catholic Charities and others, because they've sent far more people there than has the state of Texas. Second, I want to address the legal issue because this is just a crazy lawsuit that has no legality whatsoever. Once a migrant gets on a bus or a plane from Texas going up there, the Biden administration has already authorized them to be in the United States of America. Because they're authorized to be in the United States of America, the U.S. Constitution, the Commerce Clause, and a Supreme Court ruling providing for the right to travel exists, and Mayor Adams is in violation of their legal rights here in the United States.
Ooh,
so this is going to be a lawsuit he's going to lose very rapidly, and my hope is that Mayor Adams will have to pay the attorney's fees, the costs of court, and be penalized for filing a frivolous lawsuit.
Yeah, and you make a very good point talking with Texas Governor Greg Abbott, because correct me if I'm wrong on this, what I was looking at, not just from Border Patrol, but also Bill Malugin and a couple of other reports, when these illegal entrants are getting on the buses, they can request where to go, correct? And a lot of them have been requesting New York City because of what they heard about sanctuary cities.
We bus migrants to cities that the migrants identify where they want to go. So we're not doing it against their will. And Mayor Adams knows this himself because he sent his team down to Texas months ago to find out what was going on. And there was a room full of migrants and they were asked, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to New York? Everyone raised their hand. And his staff about died when they saw that happen. They know these migrants are choosing to go to New York, and Mayor Adams is violating the Constitution and laws by denying their ability to go to New York.
Now, for people who might be unfamiliar,
if I can just add this, it shows the crazy hypocrisy. They are a self-identified sanctuary city where they want to have these migrants there. All we're doing is giving them what they're asking for. But you know what? It's easy for these Democrats and liberals to come out and have all these talking points, but then when they actually have to live up to it, by God, it's something different altogether. Yeah. Democrats have said they are the party of migrants, of immigrants. But when put to the test, when they actually have to deal with the migrants and immigrants, they said, no, make Texas deal with that. It shows their rank hypocrisy of these liberal leaders across the country.
Well, Eric Adams is using Texans as pawns. Governor. He's using these Texas border towns and hardworking people who come in legally and create a life for themselves, add to the tax base in Texas. He's using all of these people as pawns. I was making note that for people who didn't know, the governor was also attorney general. So he knows a little bit about the law, which is why I obviously agree with. I think that this lawsuit's ridiculous because this is the bus companies didn't create Joe Biden's policy. They didn't create the conditions in which they were hired and just provided a service.
Well, you're right, but also you're right about something else you made reference to, and that is we have all these small little towns on the border. You have Eagle Pass, Del Rio, et cetera. They're the ones that are inundated with all these migrants every single day. And all we are trying to do is to relieve the congestion of the illegal immigrants who are in these small border towns caused by Joe Biden's policies and moving them elsewhere where they have every right to go under federal law. And listen, if Mayor Adams or any of these other mayors want to do anything about this, they need to go to the source of the problem. The source of the problem is Joe Biden. Remember this, Dana. 4 years ago, we had the lowest illegal border crossings in 40 years. It's because President Trump had in place 4 policies: remaining in Mexico, Title 42, end catch and release, and building a border wall. When Joe Biden came into office, he eliminated all of those policies, and that's exactly why we have the problem we have today. Mayor Adams would not have any migrants in his city if he insisted that Joe Biden enforce the immigration laws of the United States of America.
And that's what so many people who have questions about. How can the federal government interfere in a state, especially border state's right to protect the sovereignty, not just of its border, but also its citizens? I understand the federal government's responsible for the border, but they're also creating lawless conditions in these areas. Crime is up. I was reading another figure, something like, in December alone, 290,000 of these encounters by Border Patrol for the month of December, which is weird that Karine Jean-Pierre says it's not unusual. It ebbs and flows. I think setting a record like that, Governor, that defines unusual.
Well, it also defines an invasion. Listen, speaking of New York, the New York City population is about 8 million people. Under Joe Biden, there's been more than the population of New York City come across our border illegally. That is an invasion. And Texas has every right to step up and put the buoys in the water, to build more than 100 miles of razor wire barrier that denies illegal entry, to build the very same border wall that President Trump has built. So Texas, over the course of the next 2 years, we will complete more border wall than Trump was able to complete in the state of Texas. So and that goes back to the taxpayer money you were talking about. Texas taxpayers have paid well over $10 billion for our border security efforts. And I got to tell you this, Dana, also is having results. Texas represents about 60% of all the border mileage with Mexico, but yet we only represent now less than 40% of the illegal immigrants coming across the border, because the cartels have realized it's a whole lot easier getting them into New Mexico, into Arizona, into California than it is in the state of Texas.
Yeah, they're making a lot of money. What was it? Something like $32 million a week from smuggling people across the border illegally, and that's just in a 245-mile stretch of the border. Maybe Eric Adams could appeal to the cartels to get to recoup some of the money there. Talking to Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Speaking of the razor wire, too, you mentioned this. The Department of Justice obviously demanding that the Supreme Court allow Border Patrol to cut the razor wire that's been used as this force multiplier and deterrence for people crossing in the areas where you really, it's shallow enough you can just kind of walk across. Talk to me about this, because you've said, I'm reading your remark from Twitter, see you in court.
Well, this is really amazing. Dana, think about this. In the history of America, have you ever seen a president try to prevent a state from securing its own safety? We laid down this razor wire, hundreds of miles of it, that was an effective deterrent and repelled migrants from entering the state of Texas. And because it was so effective, Biden ordered the Border Patrol to either cut it or to lift it. There was one instance where they put a forklift under it and lifted it up and allowed hundreds of migrants into the country illegally. It's insanity. that the Biden administration is doing this. And so we got a court ruling from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals saying that the Biden administration could not interfere with our razor wire operation, and Biden appealed to the Supreme Court. So Texas is against the Biden administration in the U.S. Supreme Court as we speak right now, where Biden is begging the court to allow the Biden administration to tear down the razor wire wall that we have built.
What happens, Governor, because I know you've sent National Guard down, and I know that there's a role legally that the National Guard is allowed to play. And this is the other thing for people who it gets very in the weeds to explain the different hierarchies, because federal government's supposed to control this, but yet the state can control this. And I just think if the federal government doesn't do its job, then we should just be able to do whatever we need to protect the southern border. That's my view on it. But for the people who don't live in border states, explain the hierarchy and the process. Like what can be done, like right up to the line where maybe they would come and say, Governor, you're breaking the law. We got to arrest you for trying to enforce the law at the border. Like what is the maximum amount of pressure that you as governor can implement to protect the border?
Well, we are using every tool that can be used, from building a border wall to building these border barriers to passing this law that I signed that led to another lawsuit by the Biden administration, where I signed a law making it illegal for somebody to enter Texas from another country. And they're subject to arrest and subject to deportation. And so we are deploying every tool and strategy that we possibly can. The only thing that we're not doing is we're not shooting people who come across the border, because of course the Biden administration would charge us with murder.
And you can't even keep them detained, from what I understand. Like the administration won't even allow you to keep them in detainment for X amount of days.
So we have used a tool for it's called trespass. Anyone caught in trespass is actually subject to being jailed, and we have arrested and jailed people for trespass because they were trespassing illegally in the state of Texas.
It is amazing the loopholes and the Olympic kind of flips that you have to do just to get around all these edicts from the administration. That's what really blows my mind. I tell people all the time, I'm like, remember, I mean, they basically stopped short of threatening arrest with Jan Brewer in Arizona when she was trying to fight back against Obama-Biden. Now it's Biden-Harris. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, we'd love to have you back because this is going to be an ongoing issue. But this deluge that we're seeing at the border, it's absolutely unsustainable. We're seeing, as you said, entire cities in 1 month come across. And it's not sustainable, not in Texas or anywhere. We appreciate you, Governor. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Dana.